There's a great movie called The Departed, a little violent for kids, but there's a scene in the movie where Mark Wahlberg, they're on a stakeout, and somehow the guy loses the guy that they're tracking, and Wahlberg's all upset and yelling at the guy, and the guy looks up and he says, "Well, who are you?" And Wahlberg says, I'm the guy doing my job. You must be the other guy.
I may never be able to watch that movie again. Anyone who seriously seeks to be a solid news reporter will tell you there's no place you'd rather be than wandering about Washington, D.C. and digging into the stories emanating from there. Oh yeah, there's more than a couple of stories emanating from there, because sometimes it's salacious, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's scandalous, scurrilous, or maybe just plain steady as she goes. Hey, it's a baptism of daily fire for which there's no escape once you're in. I feel like Michael Corleone. I'm trying to get out, but they put me back in. In some cases, you manage to survive. Here's somebody who did. Welcome into MidPoint. 17 years at CNN, 10 years assigned to the Pentagon, now keeping it real around the dial at WMAL Radio in Washington. Pleasure to welcome Chris Plante to the studios here at Newspecs.
Hey, Ed.
Great to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Are you ever going to be able to watch Departed now?
I was never really a big fan of the movie before. Now I'm definitely not a big fan of the movie. It was a long way to go to make a very small point, and a story not well told.
We have a president right now, and we have been covering news, you and I, pretty much along the same line of time, who seems to enjoy bad comedy and the jab more than any other. And it's a way of trying to make a point, but it's a bad way of trying to make a point. It's like comics tell you, don't try comedy. Don't do this. You don't do this for a living.
Yeah,
and he enjoys it.
Well, he spends a lot of time doing sort of snarky late-night comedy jokes, and they're always jabs at Republicans. And the reality is there are a lot of things that he should be doing as President of the United States. He should stop the bleeding on the border. He should stop this crisis. There are children suffering, not just inside of our own borders, but on trains coming up to the United States from Central America, and there are reports that children are being killed, being run over by trains, being sexually assaulted, women, their mothers, being sexually assaulted. There is an actual humanitarian crisis going on, and the president is shooting pool and holding photo ops and then saying he doesn't want photo ops, and he's using this as never let a crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel said. He's using this crisis to advance his already existing agenda. He wants legislation that stalled in the Senate to get through. This legislation in the Senate would not solve the crisis on the border, certainly not in the short term. The president is allowing this situation to play itself out because he believes it's a political winner for him. And that, quite honestly, is disgraceful. That might be described as reprehensible or despicable even. He could stop this by taking a few quick actions, presidential actions. Remember his pen and his phone. He could stop this overnight.
Disgraceful, but certainly also foolish, because if you think about it, what is out here and what is perception? Perception is 99 and 9/10 reality, which is what we're seeing here. So what is happening is, it is that reality to people right now. It is that you don't care. They can spin it however they want, but I even talk to Democrats right now who say, where is this guy? What happened and what are we doing? They're clueless just as well.
Yeah, well, and they should be. If this were a Republican president, I'd be outraged. I'd be ashamed of him. I think the behavior, regardless of party, is disgraceful. There are children suffering, and they're being used as political tools by the president. The president has a policy they call the Deferred Action Against Childhood Arrivals, DACA. Naturally, they have to reduce it to a bad acronym, being Washington, D.C. And deferred action against childhood arrivals, big news in Central America. And word got out and is being broadcast on television stations down there, and it's in the newspapers, that the policy in the United States is that if your children come across first, that there will be no action taken against them. That's why this has been dialed up. The situation has not deteriorated over the course of the last year or 3 years in Honduras or other Central American countries to the point where people are fleeing because it's like the civil war in Syria. That's simply not the case. The reality is that this administration, they're falling back and blaming it on this 2008 law, which actually had to do with child sex trafficking and not with children stumbling across our border at all. It was a very specific law, voted in unanimously by the House of Representatives and by the Senate, and signed by George W. Bush in 2008. This wasn't about open borders for children. The deferred action against, but that's what the administration is using as an excuse.
Yes.
DACA is one of the root causes of this, and if the president simply went to the podium at the White House, which he has the ability to do, and stopped doing Jimmy Fallon jokes, and instead said that this is no longer our policy, and chartered a few planes. Senator Ron Johnson was on your air yesterday, pointing out this obvious fact: you could take a few $1 million and load up charter planes. They're flying kids and parents all over the country right now with chartered planes. They could just as easily fly them back to their home countries, and boom, this thing stops. You announce that DACA is no longer the policy of the United States of America, and when the local news in Tegucigalpa shows 2 plane loads of kids being returned, they're going to stop spending $5,000 or $7,000 and putting their kids in grave danger to get them into the United States of America if they know that they're going to be returned overnight. So the president knows how to stop this. I know how to stop this. Certainly he knows how to stop this, but he chooses not to. And instead, he's on the campaign trail for his legislation in the Senate, and he's using the children as human shields. And there are literally children dying, according to the reports, trying to get to the United States, and women being abused, children being abused. Stop the bleeding, then deal with the issues that we have already inside our border. But the president obviously sees this as a political opportunity, and it's inexcusable. And Democrats should recognize this too.
I got a minute left, and no, go ahead. Finish.
I heard this morning that in Texas and the border states, they're projecting that they will run out of beds for children by August. We're expecting this to go on until August. Why not stop it today? Why not take a couple of quick presidential actions and stop the suffering today? And Democrat, Republican, Independent, ask yourself that question. Know that the president could stop it immediately if he chose to, and then ask yourself why he's not taking those obvious, simple steps to stop the bleeding.
I said it yesterday on the air that the president is now like the emperor without any clothes, and we really need to start looking at it. And the funny thing is, you now see Democrats and Republicans who are both seeing it for a change, because when the White House starts admonishing some of its own and going after Democrats and saying, "You'd better be quiet, young man."
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, that's right. The White House calling up and threatening Democrat members of Congress for speaking up. That's party discipline, but this is not the United States of America that I grew up in, and I would like to think that the President of the United States actually cared about the human aspects of this more than he cared about the political aspects of this, but unfortunately I don't see any evidence that that's the case.
Well played, sir. WMAL Radio in Washington. Pleasure.
Good to see you.
Come on by, stop by anytime. Come on by.
Thanks a lot.
Come on down, we'll get you beach towels.
All right. I could use a little more beach time.
No, come on. We can do it here. It's easy. All right, coming up next, we'll preview what's to come on the Friday call, The Steve Mulsberg Show. That and a whole lot more as we finish up here on MidPoint, where every day we question everything.